how could we move faster from the I to we? How could we capitalize on what we have now, this sweet spot where we're all sort of acquaintances? There's this beautiful nostalgia, like, I know you from 10 years ago, but I don't know where, you know? Did you go to that house, to like concerts at that house? Maybe you did, I don't know. But the opportunity to build something just seems like burgeoning at like every crossing. So how do we capitalize on that? How do we move into that area of cooperation as quickly as possible or as easily as possible?
One of the things I'd like to ask Robert is, I know that you have started some really new programs with children. You did this recent Earth work with the Native
Sacred
American.
Land,
yeah, maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and how you found Boise responsive to that.
So I agree with all these things that I've heard, but I have kind of a funny word that describes Boise for me. I've been here for 5 years too. For me, the word that describes Boise is comfortable. And I think that there's a really good side to that and a really bad side to that. The really good side is that if you have some energy and some ideas, you can do anything you want. If you don't, you can just sit here and nothing's gonna happen. This is not a city like a big city where you're constantly pushed to excel. And so one of the challenges that we have when we're creating programs is, and this is something that the staff at the Boise Philharmonic has heard to the point that they probably would not like to hear it again, but it's okay. I said, our job isn't to meet expectations. Our job is to exceed expectations. Our job isn't to set the bar this high because that's what we can do in Boise. Our job is to set the bar way higher because that's what it needs to be, period. Boise needs to be the receiver of that growth and that development, not the reason for it. So it needs to be a place not only where you can, in my opinion, but where you want to excel way past where you think you can, and way past where you need to pass in order to be successful in Boise. The bar's not that high here because it's a very comfortable place. And you know what? With a little bit of energy and a little bit of ingenuity and a little bit of money, you can achieve something. So that's my opinion about the word that describes the city. But let me talk about I to we. My job generally, I describe to people that I'm a decomposer. Basically what I do is I take a score and I unconstruct it, deconstruct it, and try to figure out what the composer was thinking, and I try to put it together, and then I try to bring it to life for you, the audience. When I first arrived here, a couple of years after, I should say, there was the announcement that 2013 was the 150th anniversary of the city of Boise. How exciting we would all celebrate that. It's really super exciting. Except that it sort of dawned on me, and I'm not naturally a negative person, but I do think about other things. And that was, well, what was going on 151 years ago? I mean, it's curious to me, like, was it just vacant land and all of a sudden some Europeans showed up and bam, there was a city and life was great? Turns out not so much. It turns out that there was an enormous relocation of Native Americans that was one of the ugliest splotches on our history. And that it seemed to me that it was an incomplete way to celebrate the 150th anniversary of a city without exploring or at least discussing what had gone on before. So I went to Jim Cockey, an Idaho composer, and I said, Jim, I want to commission a brand new piece for chorus, our chorus, for percussion, and for dancers. And Ballet Idaho agreed to come on board. And so we created this ballet. The idea of the ballet was to somehow evoke this relocation that occurred. And so Jim did something that was really extraordinary. Jim went down to the elders of the Shoshone and Bannock tribes and said, this is what we're thinking. We'd like to talk to you about this process. And they said, you know, we're a little nervous about you. We don't know what you want. And so Jim talked a little more, and they got a little less nervous. And eventually they're like, wait a minute. You're going to write a piece about the relocation and you want our input? He said, yes. And they said, well, is this just going to be one of those phony like things where, you know, like you got Indians like up and down on the stage and it's, no. It's going to be Jim's music expressing this. And so Jim and the elders of the Shoshone and Bannock tribes really connected. And there was a real synergy. There was a real we that was created from that set of eyes that was in the room. So Jim began to write this piece. And one of the quotes that he used was from the grandmother of one of the elders, and she said that the Boise River ran red with the blood of my people, of our people. And so that was the quote that was used in the whole third movement of the piece. So the piece was written, and Alex Ozodnik from Ballet Idaho was asked to choreograph it. Alex grew up in East Germany, and he's old enough to remember the wall going down. He's my age. But more importantly than that, perhaps, is that his mother was 10 years old in 1945. And his mother told the story many times of him. She was in a camp in the Czech Republic now, and she was forced as a 10-year-old to march back to Germany and then march back to the camp, by the way. It was some sort of bizarre exercise, 100 miles each way. And she talks of walking along that river and seeing all the dead bodies, and that the river had run blood with the death of those people in that war. And, we don't pick a side in that particular story. This is a 10-year-old girl who's having this experience. That's what Alex brought to this piece. So the week that arrived, we got to the performance, and we invited a representative from each of the tribes, the Paiute tribe, the Bannock, and the Shoshone. And we met at the Boise Art Museum that afternoon, and we had a discussion. It was an oral history. It was fascinating. My parents were in town. My parents knew nothing of this. And the only reason I bring that up is because immediately they went to the Boise, the Idaho Historical Museum, and bought every book they could on the Native Americans in the Treasure Valley history of. But they weren't the only ones. Literally thousands of people did that. Our concert goers were not only moved, they were incredibly surprised by what they didn't know and what we didn't know. And so the mayor's office contacted us, and they said, we're really intrigued by this. We want to be a part of this somehow. And so what they ended up doing was naming our concert in 2012, November 2012, the opening event of the celebration of the 150th anniversary of the city of Boise, because that was an important component of it. And Mayor Beater came and spoke at the top of the concert. I tell you all this because this is the first time that I can think of clearly in which, rather than going from the end to the beginning and decomposing, I asked one tiny question, and the thing grew from one eye to 5 eyes to 15 eyes to 2,000 to thousands of people who all at once were experiencing this. And so, that's what happened.
Wow.
That's great.
Thanks
Thanks for doing that.
The performance was beautiful, and to me it felt like a bonding with the Native Americans.
It's interesting, but one thing is that as Jim was talking to the Native Americans, there were 4 generations since. The first generation was in such pain, it was devastating. Half of them died. The second generation would not talk about it. They just forget it. They would not talk about it. The third generation was angry. They were pissed off. They were asking questions. What happened? The current generation is looking for resolutions, looking for some reconciliation. And it just so happened that the timing of Jim showing up at their doorstep was this moment of, oh wow, we can do this together.
I thought it was brilliant.
Thank you.
Do you suppose anything like that could happen in New York or San Francisco or Santa? I think they just focus on the greats and the big.
Yes, of course it happens.
Okay.
We were talking today, Michael Tilson Thomas, the music director of the San Francisco Symphony, for instance, in the music world, is extraordinary at understanding his community and partnering with his community. And actually, another thing that Joe and I have been talking about for the past 2 days, and that is that the Boise Philharmonic, in fact, my first full year here, which was 4 years ago, we dedicated our entire season to the other arts groups in town, because I felt it when I first arrived, that there wasn't really a connection between the arts groups. And so we had Shakespeare, one concert, and the ballet and opera and Idaho dance. I mean, we've worked with so many different groups in town. But what Michael Tilson Thomas is able to do, and what I've modeled myself at, what I hope to be able to do, I shouldn't say that's too, it's not that I model it, I hope to be this, is we at the Boise Philharmonic hope to be open to people, to be able to come through the door and say to us, have you ever thought about this? What about this idea? What about how these things connect? Kind of like what you just asked. People do that all the time. And we sit down and talk. And you know what? Sometimes the things don't work. And that's totally okay. It's just not the right. But sometimes they're completely magical. For instance, the cello professor, Brian, at BSU came to me and he said, Robert, I want to get a graduate assistantship together with BSU and the Boise Philharmonic, and I want the cellist to get a full ride, play in the Boise Philharmonic, and be a student. And I said, well, what a great idea, Brian. He said, well, are you into it? And I said, no. But let's go talk to the folks at BSU. If you make it a string quartet, I'm in, because that balances out the orchestra. And so we went, and literally in 24 hours, we had the BSU String Quartet, which was fully funded, and these 4 musicians now sit in the orchestra as grad assistantships, and every 2 years will be traded out. But it happened because of that conversation. And it happened because I, or whoever, wasn't afraid of saying no, and was able to keep going. Because for me, no, this is the other thing, and I'll stop, but for me, no isn't no. No is no. Let's keep talking. Boise Philharmonic Master Chorale. The Boise Master Chorale came to me when I first got here, and they said, could we become the official chorus of the Boise Philharmonic? And I said, no, thank you, but we would love to incorporate you into our family and make you part of the Boise Philharmonic Master Chorale. Wouldn't that be thrilling? And they said, no. I said, okay, no problem. A year later, Robert, we've been thinking about what you said last year, and we think the Boise Philharmonic Master Chorale is damn sexy. Are you still in? We're in. And now we are.
I'm so grateful that John Michael is bringing up this idea of of consciously creating what it is we value the most. Because I was born and raised in Boise, and nobody wanted to be here in the 70s. In the 80s, people started flooding in, and their cry was that there was so much opportunity. And it just scared the heck out of me, because what we saw was a whole lot of development and sprawl starting to happen. And, it's like opportunity means a free-for-all kind of a situation. And when you talk about really discovering and making an effort to understand where we come from, and becoming conscious that we're still living in a community, and we're living off of the goodwill that has been created. I mean, some of it's bad will, but we have to take responsibility for that. And that opportunity becomes something that we build into our community, so that opportunity can end when this becomes a big city, and there's no longer all that opportunity because it's all built on top of itself. But when we think about consciously creating the kind of community that continues to make space for ideas to come up, not just from the top down, but from the bottom up, then I feel like we're building on the goodwill. It's almost like a lot of people have gotten to live off the fat of this community, and now we want to consciously create the environment where creativity is still an aspect, even when we become more sophisticated, when we become more developed. And I just really appreciate you bringing that aspect in, that has to be done consciously, or that will disappear.
Well, and we have to keep creating the fat ourselves too. That's the comfort zone. We
To
can't
pass on.
Right, we can't just live on the fat.
Beautiful.
And
So-
there's something, I'm thinking of something interesting now. If you create a very fertile ground, a deeply fertile creative ground, what erupts are geniuses, great people who quest to go forward into a special place. Whether it's a scientist, an artist, that's an important, I think, aspect of not just generosity, but heightened, passionate generosity to go beyond where we are now. So it's generosity, absolutely. Let's hold hands. But there's something greater than that too. So whatever that means, I'm not quite sure what that means here in this community, because I don't know it. But if you create this, what I said, fertile ground, this really deeply imaginative, creative place, then there'll be these people, men and women, who come forward and quest to go to something higher. I think that's one kind of way of looking at a community too.
Well,
Does that make sense? Say yes.
Yes.
So I think, when I look at Boise, I think Boise is an amazing place, and it gives you a great gift. And the gift that Boise gives to people, and the way I look at it, is time. And you alluded to that, Lori. When I was in Los Angeles, it would take me 3 hours, maybe minimum of 3 hours, on the freeway or doing whatever it was to get anywhere I wanted to go, right? 3 hours of unproductive time, not being with my family, whatever it is, whoever you want to be with. 3 hours times 5 is 15, times 4 is 60 hours, okay? A month, that's 2.5 days, that now you lose, and now you multiply that by 12, that's 30 days. 30 days if you're living in LA, because you're on the freeway, but it's 30 days you get right here, that you get in this community, because you pick that up. It takes you 5 minutes. You said it takes you 5 minutes to get somewhere. You don't have that issue. So think about it. Think about the greatest gift that you're getting right now in this community. It's time. Where do you get that? Time to be with your family. That's why companies like Mark Monitor, that's why companies can really do well, because we can take those 24 hours, and it's a true 24 hours, right? It's true, because I'm not worried about having to get home and being on the freeway and then be worried that I'm not going to get to see my kid before my child goes to bed. That's what you pick up here, and everybody should really appreciate that.
Did you want to say something as well?
I think to your point, there are many brilliant people in many professions who've come from Boise. And I know a handful who are out in the world who'd actually love to return to this community, but they don't see there being an infrastructure here to support that. So
I can understand that. Yeah, I can understand that.
I think there is an infrastructure, but there is and there isn't. There's a real estate developer in town who recently, we sat on a meeting where we thought about, he's redeveloping the old Hawaii Plaza Hotel, and he wanted some ideas about what to do with it. And one of the ideas I had was, there has to be somewhere out there in the world a Boisean who is a fantastic chef working somewhere, and if you created a restaurant and give him carte blanche to return home and do whatever he wanted with that restaurant, he would come home because he wants to be here. But there isn't that sort of environment for him to exist. And I think what's exhibited on the panel right now are people that are making that environment happen for everyone. But it's not just the goal to redraw people back to Boise, but it's also keep developing possibility for all of us who live here.
Yeah, I guess what you were saying, Christina, too, that creating that opportunity, and to me that place of opportunity is in the seed that's in everyone. So opening up that seed, and I guess one thing that struck me from the start is I was thinking about my own path, and how there's no expectation in our culture that you need a mentor. And I feel like that's something that it's like you need to like go it on your own, or like become a creative, bring out your genius on your own. And I feel like that's something it's not really feasible. So yeah. I just feel like mentorship and creating opportunity within the community and having people that are successful, and so there's this divide between like people coming back to Boise and seeing this fertile ground, but then there's like a space where between these people and then the people that are like up and coming, kind of reaching like where are we going, and then like swerving off the path, like not knowing where they're going, and it's like making that link
Yeah, what's
between
your
the
name?
two. And I feel like mentorship
Ken?
and creating a culture of mentors is what's is a potential.
I think that's
way.
terrific. Brandy and a few others and I have talked, listen, I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
What are you doing with the
I got
bell?
distracted.
Well, I'm talking to you, you're not relating to me.
I hear you now.
Now I got you. You got me. But Brandy and I have, and friends here have talked about this idea for several years now in various circumstances. By and large, this is big. I think it's big. The postmodern culture levels everything. Started in the 60s. Everyone thought everyone should be democratic and equal. What you're bringing up is an element of hierarchy. It's a good word. Where there are different strata, where some people have more genius than others, more ability and so forth. And they do lead others too. So if one can, this is an interesting thing to think about in this community. Comfort that he was talking about, real comfort, leads to kind of boring sameness that we were talking about before. Don't be comfortable here in this city. Don't be comfortable. Be edgy. Be edgy. Be crisp and daring and, have your elbows here and do zigzag, do all kinds of stuff. Don't be complacent. I feel this is important for much of America right now. Much of America.
We need to challenge each other.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I think this idea of mentoring is exactly right. I mean, this idea of, well, what is the bar? Okay, like for instance, I'll have sometimes singers will say, oh, I want to come sing with the Boise Philharmonic. And they'll sing for me and I'll say, you know what, it's not real. Well, he doesn't use local singers. I've gotten that. Like, they're pissed off at me because I'm like, it's not good enough. I'm sorry. Now, will I help you? Absolutely. But it's not the right level. And you have to set that level. You have to set it for yourself. And if you don't know what it is, you have to find somebody who can describe it to you, and you have to achieve it.
Yeah.
Two things on that, and the one thing is what he talks about with those 3 hours a day is that when you have that time in your life and you have that energy still from the day that you didn't have to spend 3 hours on the freeway, so many people in this community have given that time back to me. When the head of an insurance company that I respect very much will sit down with me and have coffee on like a bi-weekly basis to help me figure out where I want to go, and he's relaxed and happy about it, I'm just like, are you serious? You're really going to give me that time? I came from cities where those people were inaccessible to me, and so we need to give that back. And secondly, about challenging ourselves, it's one thing we talk about a lot in Treefort is that there are so many great local bands here, and one of our big missions is to keep these local artists here and to realize that they can be successful. They don't have to go to Portland or Seattle or LA to be successful. So we do that by putting them on stages with these national touring bands. About 20% of our bands are local bands. But you have to realize that that's a very small percentage of the local artists that we have here. And we have offended a lot of people locally by saying, I get you have your local following and I love you, but you're not good enough because you need to be challenging yourself. Are you touring? Are you playing too much? Are you writing new material? Are you getting? You need to challenge yourself. It has to be. You don't just get that position on this Treefort stage on this roster with these national touring bands because you're a local band. Right. You have to challenge yourself to be one of the best local bands. And in this year, even though we got a lot of gut for it, I've seen a lot of the local bands that were complacent bring themselves up to that level. They're writing new material. They're touring. They're not overplaying themselves in Boise. And I think that we need to do that to each other.
2 words to add that I haven't really heard yet, but I hear themes of coming up is engagement, having an engaged citizenry. That's a huge one for Boise, and I think we do have that in the giving, the support that you see all throughout the community. But the biggest one that I'm hearing, the common theme across the board, is being empowered. And that's the one part that if I could wish on our city for our future is more empowerment to our citizens. And if you think about it, no one that's on this panel today received permission to do what they did. They did it. They went out and created. They're creators. We want more creatives. We need more leaders. We need more people that say, I see a problem and I'm going to go solve it. I see a gap, I'm going to fill it. That's what we have to have with this city, and that's what's going to create that next level. That's that bottom up that you just talked about instead of the top down. It's empowering our citizens to take control and find ways to improve our community, to make it better. And that's going to come from the power of all of us, not
And it's
any
in
one
that
of
sharing
us.
process that elevates everybody.
Absolutely.
Well, I think you need some inspirers for that. I don't think it's just not gonna happen. I think you need people who are thrusters and questers and people who really, really have this passion to awaken. I don't think it's just gonna happen.
Right, so, one more?
Well, just quickly, one of the things that I have experienced in Boise, and I'm a Boise native, but I've lived a number of different places, and most recently in South Florida, where I was aware of a lack of depth in the culture. And I come back to Boise, and there is an incredible depth here, a willingness to engage at a deep level with one another. But what I'm hearing is the depth is there, but the need is for the inspiration and somehow for those seeds to have an opportunity to flower. And I'm really loving the idea of mentorship, but that's something I'd really like us to consider.
And you need provocateurs too,
Yes.
not just mentors. You need provocateurs here. I really mean it.
That's why we brought you.
Adding to his statement with the provocateurs, like I agree with that in the sense that.
Can we hear you a little more loudly,
sometimes
please?
the problem with
Why don't you stand up?
Is that they.
Good.
Hi, Ron. I think that a lot of the problem that stems from Boise truly embracing this community is that it gets into habit ruts
Yep.
as a culture at moments.
Yep.
And again, like it takes those type of artists that really break somebody's habit and make them realize that that habit, whether or not that habit's good or bad, but like it's like this embracement of this new thing, like can be just as good and can create a new habit to the city. And I think like I looked at Shreveport as a great example of that, where a real habit of how Boiseans went to concerts got broken, and it took time for us to deal with it for a second, and then when we realized what we had, then we really went for broke, and then we get really, really dedicated. So I think that's the other thing that's awesome about Boise is once you get them to break the habit and they like that they broke it, then they're like really, really invested in it. Then like yeah, everybody's carrying the 3-4 flag, And so I think that's something that I really, encourage us to listen to this gentleman over here because he's
You
saying
talking
the right
about
thing,
me?
which is we have to make sure that we get well, everybody's
I'm a
saying
gentleman,
that,
okay.
I like to provoke things out of people, and I think that that's something that we need to do. So.
Great. I think we're going to have to end, but I just want to say that what we're talking about is creative friction. Like. It's not that anyone can provide engagement, because you brought up engagement, right? And I was thinking, well, that's what everyone is talking about, is an absolute kind of engagement, a community that is engaged in itself and engaged in creativity, and not just depending on certain geniuses or certain artists, but an environment of creative friction that makes you want to lean into not having the time to be so comfortable, or a level of comfort toward the new and toward creativity that shouldn't be comfortable. It shouldn't be comfortable, but generous, amazingly generous. And I just really want to thank our panel, because I think that we have a panel now here of individuals who have been amazingly generous in our community as an example of that. And quite a variety about where creativity can really go, and just want to encourage. We have these town hall meetings because we think engaged citizenship should be a natural position. That most people have something they want to say or want to do or to value, and we're actually at Muse Project really hoping to encourage more of this provocative, creative friction in Boise, and for people to understand that it is actually to self-implicate in that, not only as audience, as individuals, but as people who want to see the arts or want to, like, I love what Faisal said. The truth is, I love to make businesses, you know? So.
I have one more thing to say. I think what you should think about doing is bringing in a series of speakers who really are provocateurs, who are really world leaders in all kinds of ways, to really kind of add ferment to this. It always happens this way. We're doing this in Boston, in my community. It's really, really yeasty. It's really very good. I think that's one way, a concrete way of so some of you get together, some of you people, and just get a panel together and get some money together and get these great speakers, leaders, visionaries, scientists, artists in and just stir up things. I think that's one way of doing things.
Get your sharp elbows out.
Huh?
Get your sharp elbows out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and part of what we've been trying to feature is how high that bar is in individuals here, you know, and locally bring that here, but to bring influence. Well, we brought you from Boston, but
yes, you did.
But to continue to create greater and greater creative friction in our community about who do we want to be. And I love it that John Michael is talking about these moments pass, right? Moments of creativity pass. We tend to think that they can, that we always have access to it, but if we don't act upon that creative urge that is not very comfortable, these times pass and our lives pass. And so I just want to say thank you for being here tonight and engaging. Thank you very much. Please engage in our website. It's called Like Us. I was always too proud to ask anybody to like me, but like us on Facebook, museproject.org, and we'll be posting soon other community focus we're going to do with the town hall meetings. One, not quite as fun as this one, global warming. What's Idaho doing about it? Because there are things to do about it, and also the state of